A few days ago, I of course put out a video regarding some potential issues which I have with TDU, mostly from the beta, of course, and it's not long now until the game fully releases. I think it's, the 12th of September, early access for those of us who pre-ordered, around the 5th, I think it was. There are certain things about this game which are different, even compared to TDU2, especially when it comes to the map and the exploration. So there are 5 tips that I want to give, especially to newcomers, which will save you a huge amount of time, they will prevent you from wasting potentially a lot of money, and especially at the start of the game, these 5 things will really help you to get ahead. And funnily enough, the first one is actually intrinsically linked to pretty much all of the others. So we'll get to that one first. One of the biggest things about TDU has always been enjoying the massive, expansive map, but this game more so than ever before, because not only do you, much like in TDU2, earn cash while driving, and we're going to come back to that point in a second, so you can earn cash for basically just doing nothing but driving around anyway and drifting, etc. But more so than that, there are tons of cash tokens, notoriety tokens, I don't recall exactly what they call them in the game, scattered around the entire map. Now the cash in particular adds up a lot more quickly than you'd think. You get like 12 grand, 20 grand per token, and they're not difficult to find. It even shows them on the map when you get close to them. The key reason why I'm saying all this though is because just by exploring the map, you get multiple benefits. Now a video that I'm actually going to be putting out soon on the channel is a ton of the wrecked vehicles, which I'm going to show you the exact location of from day one. So if you want to just bypass looking around, you can also find out how to discover those vehicles and save yourself even more time. So definitely check out that video. For now though, the cash alone, you'll earn easily over 1 million credits. And that's just from like the top half of the map, just from looking around the roads and collecting all the different coins. And again, they're not difficult to find. On top of that though, you get wrecked vehicles, which are unlocking cars which are potentially more expensive. Something like a Beetle, for example, where you don't even need to buy it. Something more expensive like a Mercedes Gullwing. I mean, why buy it if you could just unlock it from wrecks, for example? So there's so many benefits to doing that, as well as the enjoyment of exploring the map. The next thing is intrinsically tied into that because, and this will especially apply to new players, for those who played TDU2, you'll probably agree with me on this one, the way that you earn cash for skills while driving, it's kind of similar to what a lot of racing games have these days, like Forza Horizon, for example. You earn cash and earn points for drifting, etc. while you're driving. This game has it in a tier system, where you earn level 1 rewards, which is like 1,000 credits, pretty quickly and pretty easily. It levels up from driving quickly, driving on the wrong side of the road, near misses, drifting, all the usual kind of stuff. The thing is, and this is my piece of advice, bank early and bank often. Don't be caught up in the temptation of trying to get that next tier of 5 grand instead of 1 grand and then like 12 grand instead of 5, because 9 times out of 10 some car will pull out in front of you, you'll grind against some hedge or hit a railing. Just by the frantic nature of the map itself, especially on roads that you've never been on, you are far better off to bank the cash as soon as it gets to 1,000 credits. It seems like a simple tip to say, kind of an obvious one, but trust me, you will be grateful for it, because it's much more beneficial to bank it every time you get 1,000 and end up with like 50 grand that you didn't even realize you had, than trying to constantly get 5 or more and losing it every time. That brings me to point number 3, because what are you going to do with all of this juicy cash that you've earned, as well as of course now needing to do some races? Well, you've bought your first car, presumably, like a Mustang or an Alpine or whatever you start the game with, but now you're going to need to buy other vehicles at some point to progress through the game and get better and better. So what vehicles should you be buying? Well, here in particular, 2 of the points are specific recommendations for vehicles that you need to buy. My first recommendation, one of the most OP, if not the most OP, lower level vehicles in the game, is the Audi TT RS. This thing is ridiculous, and with minimal upgrades like all level 1 stuff, it's like a 2.9 second 0 to 60 car that can do nearly 200 miles an hour. It has ridiculously good handling, tons of grip, especially in wet weather. You will destroy everything else on the grid, and it's just easy. It's like a cheat code of a car. It's expensive though. For what it is, it's like $500,000, and that goes back to what I said. Explore the map first. Now you've got tons of cash to throw away on buying yourself a couple of really OP cars, and then all of the races will take care of themselves. The next one, tying into that same point, is another vehicle recommendation any TDU2 player will be more than familiar with. It was one of the most OP cars in the game, the Buggy. They've tried to make this one have a bit more of a grounded approach in this game. They've given it a proper name. It's a purchasable vehicle, whereas if I recall you had to unlock it or something like that in TDU2, I don't recall now. But it's a ridiculously good vehicle, especially when you apply some of the upgrades to it, not only for racing with, I mean, it wipes the floor with everything else in the off-road class, even just for normal exploration, the Buggy is fantastic. You can go literally anywhere with it, even on hills where you would have gotten stuck in the previous game. This thing just powers up hills like it's nothing. Absolutely a huge recommendation there. It's not too expensive of a vehicle either, given how OP it is. And yes, a Porsche or an Audi Q7 or whatever else might be more desirable, or a Mercedes G-Wagon, but trust me when I say the buggy is a far, far better investment. My advice is, when it comes to these cars, buy these OP ones first and then move into collecting the rest later on, because using these OP vehicles you'll earn so much cash that you can just buy whatever you want down the line. The last tip or trick is one which is kind of obvious to those who use a manual gearbox anyway, but for those who perhaps drive in auto mode, especially if you're driving a rear-wheel drive car in particular, a Mercedes SLK, a Mustang, whatever it is, especially something like a hypercar, you'll often find, especially in wet weather, that when you exit a corner, you'll find that the car will very easily spin up its wheels, but the bigger problem than that is because of the physics which could well change later on, I'm sure they will, but for the moment at least, the car will start to quite violently tank slap and fishtail across the road, and it's quite easy to lose control. A super easy way to overcome that is this piece of advice. Change up a gear as you exit the corner. It puts the car into lower revs, does not spin the wheels up anywhere near as much, and essentially puts the car into what would be more of a cruiser gear at the time. So you won't quite get the same throttle response, but by changing up, much like in real life, the car won't try and spin up its wheels anywhere near as much. Now, you don't need to do this with a four-wheel drive or all-wheel drive car, and you don't really need to do it for front-wheel drive either, so this is mostly just for rear-wheel drive stuff, and again, especially at the start of the game, this will really benefit you in those wet events with something like a Mustang or an Alpine or a 370Z or whatever it is you're driving. And if you find that the car still tries to spin up its wheels, back off the throttle just a little bit and change up another gear. So sure, the car may want to exit the corner in second or third, but bump it up into fourth. If necessary, bump it up into fifth if it still starts to spin, and if it's still spinning, just back off a little bit, try not to overcorrect the steering, and then, because it's semi-automatic, once the car's got a move on, the game will naturally kick it down into the right gear again, but by that point, the car's already going quicker, you're pointing in a straight line, and you can put the power down better. So that one alone will save you a huge amount of annoyance and frustration, because later on, you'll be more experienced, you'll know how to drive hypercars by that point, and you'll be fine. But especially for newer players who've never experienced these physics, whatever else, I think that one really will benefit you. And there's kind of a bonus tip in there as well. Don't be afraid to explore off of the map, because as some of my fellow beta players and early access players will have already seen, there are actually roads, kind of dotted roads, which are not listed on the map. You have to find them for yourself, and then they open up as you drive on them. And more than a few of those roads do contain either vehicle wrecks or tokens, and more often than you'd think, they're quite lucrative to go down those roads. And many of those do seem to be kind of centralized around the midpoint of the map, at least in Hong Kong, so be on the lookout for that as well. And like I said, stick around for those wreck locations on the map. For now, I'll probably release all of the wrecks that I found in the beta, and then later on when I find all the rest, I'll do the other half of those as well. But for now, thanks for watching.